President Trump has ordered the United States military to restart nuclear testing, alleging, without really showing any evidence, that Russia and China were also conducting nuclear tests. But is Putin now ramping up his own nuclear program in response to what he claims is U.S. provocation? And is this really the direction we want to be moving in nuclear powers? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Hit subscribe and let's talk about it. So, Vladimir Putin has ordered preparation for possible nuclear tests after a 35-year pause. Now, this 35-year pause was done largely because of the partial test ban treaty, right, and the later comprehensive test ban treaty, in which the global nuclear superpowers agreed that we're not going to conduct full-scale critical nuclear explosions, even for testing purposes, even for peaceful purposes, because of, again, trying to establish a norm on planet Earth that we don't make nuclear stuff blow up, right? We just don't set off nuclear explosions. And that has been largely respected in large part because, well, we already did a few thousand tests and gathered a lot of data and allowed us to build really good simulations. We also, of course, routinely run nuclear power plants, as we've talked about. And if you can run a power plant, right, it's like saying, hey, if I know the gasoline that I put in my car engine and the car turns over and runs, I don't need to do a test to know that if I put that same gasoline in a big old plastic container and then I threw a match at it, that's going to light on fire. I know it burns, right? I know it's going to blow up because that's what gasoline does. And I know it's gasoline because it runs my car, right? So that's kind of the way the world has operated for the last 35 years. And the treaty just kind of respects that. And so the fact is that, again, President Trump has thrown that norm into the paper shredder for no real discernible reason. And so Vladimir Putin has said, well, we're going to respond in kind. And now, to be clear, Putin has asked his Ministry of Defense to prepare proposals for future nuclear tests, which is not the same thing as launching a nuclear test, right? He said, quote, to collect information, analyze it, and submit plans on a possible start of work to prepare for nuclear weapons testing. So in all likelihood, I suspect that this is a version of similar to what Trump is doing, where he said, listen, I want to do some nuclear tests that don't necessarily violate this treaty, right? And Vladimir Putin always does this sort of thing too, right? You know, he loves nuclear saber rattling, where he makes these vague, oblique statements about possible nuclear weapons. Or my favorite is always where he says Russian nuclear forces are at the maximum state of readiness, which has been true every single day for the last 50 years, because that is how mutually assured destruction works. Both sides always have their nuclear forces at the readiness, right? And again, like Trump said, the U.S. is planning to conduct some testing without clarifying. He reiterated justification, saying, quote, other countries do it. If they're going to do it, we're going to do it. I'm not going to say here. Right now, actually, one policymaker said it was demonstrably false because, again, you can detect nuclear explosions anywhere pretty much on Earth through air isotope testing. There's some isotopes that just only get created in a critical nuclear explosion. And then you can detect it through seismic readings. That's how we knew down to the hour when North Korea tested their nuclear weapon. But in fact, Russia's foreign intelligence chief said that diplomats had asked Washington to explain exactly what's meant by the statement, but got no clear response. That's because, of course, Washington diplomats likely have no idea what the president's talking about, because he makes policy based on whatever vibes he's feeling in that day. And as a 80-year-old with likely dementia, nobody really knows. There's not really a lot of thought or thinking or memory put into this thing, right? So the problem is that the Russians cannot take this lying down, right? They need to maintain the same level of readiness as the United States. And the U.S. actually has appeared to make good on it, right? Launching a Minuteman III nuclear... Now, wait. This is annoying. Launching a Minuteman III missile that was part of a test that was not in any way, shape, or form equipped with a nuclear warhead. It was not a nuclear test. It was a test of an ICBM, a nuclear weapon delivery vehicle, which, again, was tested to validate the reliability, readiness, and accuracy of the nation's ICBM fleet. The launch was routine and scheduled years in advance, and likely meant that it was also going to be broadcast to China and Russia. Why? Because China and Russia are always, their satellites are always watching. Because, again, maximum state of readiness. And so when they see an ICBM launch, they go, yo, the U.S. just launched an ICBM. Maybe Trump finally had a stroke and did it. And then the U.S. has to go, no. We tell them like weeks and months ahead of time. We say, listen, on this date, at this time, we're going to launch an ICBM. It's going to be one ICBM. It's going to be launched from this location in California. It's going to fly this trajectory, and then it's going to fall in the ocean. And it's just a test. Don't freak out. And they go, oh, okay. The Russians did the same thing, by the way, with the Oreshnik. When they launched their Oreshnik at Ukraine, they called the United States 30 minutes prior. They said, listen, you're going to see an MRBM launch, but it's going to Ukraine. It's non-nuclear. It's going to go start from this part and end up in here. Don't freak out. And that's how deconfliction works. Because again, the price of fucking this up is pretty huge. So the fact that the U.S. appears to be either doing it or, again, as they point out years in advance, it may also be, honestly, Trump distraction, where Trump takes things that are already happening and he pretends like they're a big fucking thing and he gets us all to freak out. And we forget a little more about the Epstein files or his embarrassing losses for Republicans in the latest elections. But the takeaway, I think, that's important is that the rest of the world, right, doesn't know that. They don't know for sure whether Trump is going to actually detonate a nuclear weapon in fucking Kansas or whatever, or if he's just talking a bunch of bullshit. They don't know that for sure. And because nobody holds the president accountable, they have even less faith that, for example, Congress or the DOD is going to rein him in if he does something stupid. So they say, well, we have to maintain the same level of readiness. So even though it's probably Trump playing games, he seems to have not thought through the fact that he is moving towards the normalization of nuclear war, which is a very troubling direction to be going in this day and age. So anyway, guys, become a member at Combat Vet News. Support me, get uncensored combat videos, and best of all, you can now get membership through YouTube. Just check the membership button below, and they'll give you access to, we'll give you a login for Combat Vet News. Thanks to all our Colonel tier members, guys like GMAC Club, Henry Russo, James Porce, Paul, Peter Fucci, and all of our Lieutenant tier members. Hit that subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.